A quiet Tuesday morning at Fairmont National Bank came apart over something almost nobody would have noticed: $17. That was all it took for a respected branch manager to decide a tired-looking single father wasn't worth another minute of her time. Less than half an hour later, she stood in that same marble lobby and watched executives push through the front doors in the rain, because the man she had waved away was about to move $63 million out of her bank. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. This is one you'll want to see all the way through. Outside, a thin drizzle sat over downtown Portland. People hurried past with coffee cups tucked under their jackets, and a city bus threw a fan of water across the curb on Jefferson Street. Inside the bank, everything gleamed. The marble floor caught the ceiling lights. Fresh flowers stood on the reception desk, and a piano version of an old jazz tune drifted from speakers hidden somewhere overhead. For Owen Mercer, none of that registered. He had barely slept. His 7-year-old daughter Hazel had coughed through half the night, and by 6 that morning he'd gotten her fed and dressed anyway. Oatmeal and half a banana because the groceries had to last until Friday. He smiled the whole walk to her school gate. The smile went out the second she turned toward her classroom. Every dollar counted in Owen's house. Ever since his wife Nora had died 4 years earlier from a heart condition no one had caught in time, he'd learned to stretch a paycheck until it hummed. He worked from home as a senior financial compliance consultant, a job most people never quite understood and never asked twice about. His clients were charities, universities, and nonprofits that trusted him to watch over their audits and their largest transfers. The work paid well. Years of helping foundations dig out from fraud had also made him careful, almost stubborn, about how he lived. He drove a 12-year-old pickup. His jacket was worn pale at the cuffs, and his shoes had been resoled twice instead of replaced. People often assumed he was struggling. Sometimes he let them. He wasn't at the bank that morning for himself. 6 weeks earlier, the board of the Redwood Children's Health Foundation had appointed him interim financial trustee after their longtime treasurer retired. The audits were finally closed, and the board had voted to move $63 million to an institution that specialized in nonprofit investment. Everything had been scheduled through Fairmont's own regional office. All Owen had to do was present his authorization packet and begin the transfer. Simple, or it should have been. He walked in carrying a worn leather portfolio instead of a briefcase, his umbrella dripping by the door. Near the service counter, a college kid dropped a folder and scattered a semester of paper across the floor. Owen crouched without thinking. "Here," he said, gathering pages. "You've got one hiding under the chair." The young man laughed, embarrassed, and thanked him. "No problem." Small moments like that came easily to Owen. They always had. At the customer service counter stood Veronica Hale. At 38, Veronica had built a reputation on efficiency. Regional management loved her numbers. She rarely took a day off. Her suits were always pressed, and every teller knew she expected them flawless. Lately, though, efficiency had curdled into impatience. Her branch had missed its quarterly targets, and headquarters had been leaning hard. Premium accounts productivity, fewer minutes spent on customers who didn't move the needle. Somewhere in all of it, Veronica had started seeing people as line items. She watched Owen approach, wrinkled jacket, truck keys clipped to his belt, a folder that looked older than the building. She decided before he opened his mouth that he wanted a fee waived. "Can I help you?" she said without a smile. "I hope so," Owen answered. "I've got 2 things this morning. One's a small charge on my personal account. The other is an authorized transfer for an organization I represent." She was already half listening. "Let's start with the account." Owen slid his debit card across the counter. Veronica typed. "You were charged a $17 maintenance adjustment yesterday," she said. "The charge is correct. I'd like someone to check it. I thought my account still qualified to have that waived." "It doesn't anymore. You received an electronic notice." "I never saw one." "The fee stands." "I understand," Owen said evenly. "Would someone mind reviewing it anyway? I may have misread the account terms." Behind him, a short line had formed. Veronica glanced at it, then back at him. "Sir, $17 isn't something we usually debate." "I know it's small," he said. "I just think a rule should apply the same way to everyone." That landed wrong. She heard it as a lecture. Instead of asking a teller to pull the account history, she sighed loud enough for the people behind him. If $17 is this much trouble, maybe this isn't the right bank for you. The lobby went quiet. Owen blinked once, not angry, just surprised. I'm not asking for charity, he said. I'm asking whether the charge was applied correctly. It was. I'd still appreciate a second look. The young teller beside Veronica shifted uncomfortable and said nothing. Owen picked up his card. All right. He could have pushed. Instead, he opened his portfolio. In that case, I'd like to move to my second appointment, the institutional transfer scheduled for 10:30. Veronica typed, frowning. I don't see one. It's under the Redwood Children's Health Foundation. She searched again. Nothing came up because she searched only the branch's personal appointment queue, the one she used 40 times a day, and never thought to check the institutional calendar the regional office kept separately. There isn't one, she said. There should be. Owen drew out a printed confirmation. The regional office arranged it last week. She glanced at the top line, saw the foundation's name, and set it down. Corporate matters are handled through a different office. The letter directed me here specifically. Then you'll have to reschedule. I drove almost an hour. I'm sorry, she said in a voice that wasn't. Behind Owen, a man murmured to his wife, Poor guy. Owen heard it and smiled anyway. I don't think there's a mistake here, he said. The paperwork is complete. He reached into the portfolio and slowly set a sealed authorization packet on the counter, the foundation's silver logo embossed on the front. I understand how this sounds. Would you read the first page, a minute no more? Veronica gave a short laugh. Sir, if we're arguing about $17, I'm not sure we're discussing a $63 million transaction. A couple of people nearby smiled. One teller looked hard at her keyboard. The comment had crossed a line and half the lobby felt it. Melissa, Veronica said, turning away, can you take the next customer? The message was plain. This was over. Owen stood still for a moment, no raised voice, no threats. He gathered his documents back into the portfolio, and as he turned to go, an elderly woman near the window dropped her cane. He bent, picked it up, and handed it back. Take your time. She thanked him softly. For half a second, something tugged at Veronica's conscience. Then her office phone rang and she walked off without another look. Owen didn't leave. He stepped into the seating area by the windows, opened his phone, and found one name. Amelia Cross, Executive Vice President, Fairmont National Bank Institutional Services. She had personally coordinated this transfer over 3 months of meetings with the Redwood Board. He pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Owen, good morning. Everything smooth? He looked once toward the counter. There's some confusion at the branch. No one here can find the appointment, and I wasn't able to present the authorization packet. A pause. Then Amelia's voice sharpened. Stay exactly where you are. Please don't leave the building. All right, Owen said, and ended the call. He sat by the tall windows, watching rain slide down the glass, customers coming and going. He had no interest in embarrassing anyone. He hoped she'd untangle it quietly, someone would apologize, and the transfer would go through. What he didn't know was that in 9 minutes, 3 black executive vehicles would pull up to the front entrance, and the ordinary Tuesday Veronica thought she controlled would become the longest day of her career. Across the lobby, Veronica was helping a new customer now, and her whole manner had changed. She smiled. She offered coffee. She walked impatiently through savings options. Owen watched and didn't resent her. He only wondered how many people had walked through that branch in ordinary clothes and left feeling invisible. 8 minutes later, the hum of the room shifted. Heads turned. Through the glass, 3 black SUVs rolled to the curb, one after another. The security guard straightened his jacket. The automatic doors opened, and in walked 2 members of corporate security. Then Amelia Cross herself, a leather portfolio under her arm, and beside her Harold Vance, Regional Director for Oregon Operations, with another executive carrying binders. Every employee recognized them on sight. Veronica's smile fell away. Harold scanned the lobby. Where is Mr. Owen Mercer? Owen rose. I'm here. Amelia crossed straight to him and extended both hands. Mr. Mercer, I am so sorry you had to wait. A teller quietly stopped counting cash. The Foundation's board is already at the receiving institution, Amelia went on. They've been waiting nearly 30 minutes for confirmation. It's all right, Owen said. There was some confusion. Amelia glanced toward Veronica, then back. If you're ready, we've prepared the executive conference room. Owen hesitated. There's one small thing. A $17 maintenance fee. She almost smiled. You mentioned it on the phone. It isn't really about the money. I know. It's about whether the rules were followed the same for everyone. Exactly. Harold made a quiet note in his folder. The four of them disappeared into the executive room and the heavy glass door swung shut. Silence spread through the lobby. An older man near the counter said, not quite under his breath, "Didn't she just tell him maybe this wasn't the right bank?" A woman nodded. I heard it too. Veronica remembered every sentence she'd spoken, word for word. For the first time all morning, she felt genuinely afraid. Inside, the atmosphere was another world. Legal documents lay organized across the polished oak table. Representatives from the receiving institution joined by secure video. Owen opened the same worn portfolio Veronica had refused to look at. And out came notarized trustee resolutions, board authorizations, identity verification, federal compliance certifications, transfer instructions, insurance confirmations, every page in order. Amelia studied them. I've worked with trustees for almost 20 years. I've never seen a file this clean. Owen laughed softly. I've had a lot of practice, most of it cleaning up after people who weren't this careful. The receiving institution's counsel asked a question about the insurance rider. Owen answered it before the man finished, then turned to the page that addressed it and slid it across without looking because he already knew where it was. Amelia caught the glance Harold gave her. Neither of them said anything, but both understood they were watching someone who had done this many times for organizations that never put his name on a plaque. For the next 45 minutes, no speeches, no drama, just professionals completing one of the largest nonprofit transfers the branch had ever handled. When the final authorization code appeared on the screen, Harold reached across the table. Congratulations. The transfer of $63 million has officially been initiated. Owen shook his hand. I appreciate everyone's help. He didn't celebrate. To him, it wasn't his money. It belonged to thousands of children who depended on the foundation's hospitals, its research grants, its treatment programs. Protecting it was simply the job. Outside the conference room, another meeting had already begun. Regional Human Resources joined by video. Compliance officers pulled security footage, transaction logs, appointment schedules, recorded calls. Veronica sat across from Harold. He spoke calmly. No one is being disciplined over a transaction. She nodded, hopeful. This is about conduct. He laid 2 printed pages on the table. The foundation appointment was scheduled 6 days ago in the institutional calendar. She looked down. I searched the personal queue. I assumed. You assumed. He wasn't angry, and the disappointment weighed more than anger would have. You declined to review official documentation that a customer placed on the counter in front of you. You commented on that customer's finances in front of a full lobby. And when he asked twice for a second opinion, you refused and told him to try another bank. He set a 3rd page beside the others, a printout of the branch's own service policy. Any one of these is a written procedure. You skipped all 3 in under 10 minutes. Each line landed heavier than the last. I made a mistake, Veronica finally whispered. Yes, Harold said, but the mistake wasn't misreading a calendar. It was deciding who deserved your respect before you knew who he was. The room went quiet. She stared at the table because she knew he was right. Even if Owen had truly been fighting over $17, he had deserved patience. Nearly an hour later, Owen finished the last compliance forms and stepped back into the lobby. A young teller hurried over. I'm really sorry about earlier. I should have said something. He shook his head gently. Sometimes it's hard to speak up when your manager is standing right there. Just remember next time that everyone coming through those doors is carrying something you can't see. The words stayed with her. Veronica came slowly out of the meeting room. Her eyes met Owen's. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then she approached. I owe you an apology. You don't have to. I do. I judged you before I listened. I embarrassed you in front of a room full of people. I treated $17 like it was the measure of you. It wasn't about the fee, Owen said. I know. It was about being heard. I understand that now. He offered a small smile. I hope you remember it." She'd expected a lecture. Instead, he wished her well, and somehow, that made it harder. 2 weeks later, Fairmont completed its internal review. Veronica's employment was terminated not because $63 million had left the bank the foundation had every right to move its funds, but because investigators found a documented pattern of dismissive treatment of customers, repeated failures to follow escalation procedures, complaints that had quietly stacked up over years. Owen's mourning had simply forced the bank to finally look. The decision hurt her. But it wasn't sudden. It was many small choices catching up at once. Months passed. Hazel's cough vanished with the warmer weather, and she insisted on planting tomatoes behind their small rental. One Saturday, she asked, "Dad, why do you always help strangers?" Owen smiled, tying a plant to its stake. "Because someone helped me once." "When?" "The week after your mom died. I was standing in a grocery line with a basket doing the math in my head, deciding what to put back on the shelf. I was down to counting singles. A man behind me, older, ordinary jacket, nothing special about him, told the cashier to ring it all under his card. He said, 'Not today,' and walked out before I could thank him. I never even got his name." Hazel thought about that for a while. "So you help people because of him?" "Partly, and because kindness doesn't disappear. It just moves from one person to the next." She smiled. "I like that." "So do I." Several months later, a handwritten letter arrived. The return address surprised him. It was from Veronica. Losing her job, she wrote, had forced her to slow down for the first time in years. For a while, she'd been angry mostly at Owen, then at herself, and finally at nobody once she stopped needing someone to blame. She'd begun volunteering at a community financial counseling center, sitting across the desk from the same kind of tired, careful people she used to rush through her line, helping them understand debt budgeting and what they were actually owed by a bank. Near the end, she wrote, "You probably don't remember every word you said that day. I do. You reminded me that respect should never depend on someone's balance. Thank you for meeting my pride with patience instead of anger." Owen folded the letter and tucked it into the same worn portfolio that had started everything, not as a record of someone's failure, but as proof that people can still grow after a painful mistake. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and share it with someone who still believes kindness matters. Comment, "Kindness still exists if you believe one good act can change a life." Because sometimes a life doesn't turn on millions of dollars. Sometimes it turns on someone finally learning that every person deserves the same respect, whether they're asking about $17 or entrusted with $63 million. That lesson costs nothing, and it's worth more than any number printed on a statement.